Hi everyone, welcome back to the Helen Olivia virtual workshops. My name is Lindsay and I am one of the designers here, and I am going to be leading you through the 4th of July themed class today. So we've got a lot of gorgeous red, white, and blue blooms that we're gonna put in a beautiful arrangement so you can use over the holiday weekend as a centerpiece, and it's gonna be really, really fun. So all you're gonna need is your bucket of blooms, your vase, which comes in your bag. You've got a piece of chicken wire in there. You've got a formula sheet, which tells you everything that we have in this recipe. And then you're going to need your floral tools. So I've got my floral knife. We love these Swiss Army ones, and a pair of clippers for anything hardier that you might have trouble cutting with a knife. And if you don't have either of these things, the best thing to use would be a sharp kitchen paring knife. So a small knife, nothing with a serrated edge, because we want to get sharp angled cuts on all of our blooms. And the first thing you're going to do, now that you've got everything sorted, is fill up your vase with water. And you want to leave about an inch of room at the top, because as we put things into the vase, the water level is going to rise, so make sure you're leaving room, otherwise water is going to get everywhere. And having a towel on hand is probably helpful as well if that does happen. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing, after you've got water in your vase, and you want your water to be tepid, room temperature water, you don't want it to be freezing cold and you don't want it to be hot, you want it to be right in the middle, so your flowers don't blow open too quickly if it's warm, and your flowers don't get any sort of damage on the stems if it's too cold. So you're gonna grab your chicken wire, and what I like to do with a piece like this is roll the smooth ends toward each other and make a cylinder. And then once you've got that cylinder, you're gonna tuck in those pointed ends on either side. And then that gives you a nice open cage at the top, and you're going to nestle this down into your vase. So you don't want the pointy sides to face up at you, you want the flat wire to be on top. So you're gonna nestle that into your vase, and you want to get that sitting right about vase line in there. And then the next thing we're gonna do is, since we've got full-size hydrangea today, we're gonna put that in first. And with hydrangea, you are going to strip off any of these low-lying leaves. So those aren't serving any purpose. We're taking those off. We don't want, as a general rule during this, sorry, I'm about to sneeze, we don't want leaves below the water line. So for everything that we're doing in a vase this size, this is a 5-inch cylinder vase, we are going to cut everything about the length of the vase. So that's just a pro tip. You can always cut more, but you can't make it grow back while we're doing this. So you want to be mindful of that as we're going. So I'm going to place one white hydrangea right there, and we're going to kind of alternate these. Same with these, removing those low-lying leaves. We're cutting at a sharp angle, so there's enough room for the stem to drink from. You want as much surface area as possible when you're making those cuts. So then we're gonna nestle that blue one right next to the white one. And see how I'm having them touch the vase line? You want them to be nestled as close to the top of the vase as you possibly can get. And this is just gonna really fill out the shape of our arrangement, and then we can start tucking things in. So the next one I'm gonna grab is another white one, and I'm gonna stick it in this gap in the back. And I've got a couple leaves that are kind of loose, so I'm gonna pop those off. And then I've got a broken one right there too. And then if you have any sort of damage on any of the hydrangea petals, you can just pick those off. It's really no harm taking a few off. You wanna make it look perfect, or as close as we can get it to there. So then I've pulled off those damaged petals and it looks as good as new. So same thing here, I'm making a sharp angled cut. And then I'm nestling that at the baseline. And then now that we've got that, if I'm looking down into my arrangement, there's a big hole on top. So that's where our fourth hydrangea comes in. So our fourth one is going to pop in right at the top, and we want to keep this stem a little bit longer than the others because we don't want it to fall down and sink into the center of the arrangement. So I am going to leave that there and see how that's kind of, it's creating that shape. So instead of mini green for this arrangement, we're just using the large hydrangea to really build that shape, and then we're gonna blow it out from here. And today we are using a variegated ligustrum, which is one of our favorite greeneries that we use here in the shop. It is a gorgeous light colored greenery that provides a lot of pretty contrast. So we love this in the spring and summer. And for something like this is a first example of something that we can use and split and get two pieces out of one. So since this is so long, we're not gonna stick it in just like this, we're gonna cut it in half. So I'm gonna cut it right there, and then I'm gonna strip these bottom leaves off so I've got one piece to stick in. And so this one is my second piece, and I'm gonna strip those bottom leaves off, cutting a fresh cut every time. And I'm just gonna start nestling this greenery around, and if you've got anything kind of broken off, then you can just cut it off. The nice thing about ligustrum is that you can break it up into multiple pieces, so you really get multiple uses out of one stem. So you're basically just tucking it in between the hydrangea. We want to just fill those gaps that we've left between the full-size hydrangea. And if you don't have a lot of hydrangea leaves left on, this is a perfect opportunity to kind of fill in those spaces. So just split as much as you can, but make sure you're not using any pieces that are too short for your vase. So this is just long enough to nestle at the base. And you want to kind of vary those lengths just to give it a little bit of dimension and visual interest. And you don't want everything to be the exact same length. You can totally make it more wild, or if you prefer that kind of tighter, rounder look, then just cut things a little shorter and tuck them a little more. So we're just gonna keep doing this with all of our ligustrum. And if you've got a piece like this where it has 3 at the top and you really like the look of that, you can totally just use this together. So you don't have to separate that at all, because if I separate this, I'm gonna lose this piece since it's too small. But I am going to tuck that in because I want to blow it out a little bit just so you guys can kind of see where I've put things. I'm gonna exaggerate my shape a little bit, but that's totally personal preference. There, and you can kind of just adjust as you go. And this piece needs to be angled a little lower. There. So see how I've kind of got pieces in every hydrangea section. So we just keep going with this. And then I'm actually gonna save a couple pieces for the end, so I can add any sort of greenery accent if I feel like the ligustrum becomes hidden by some of the blooms we're using, since we do have a lot of larger blooms. And when you're tucking the ligustrum in, you wanna vary the levels, so some low, some higher, some in the middle, just to kind of blend everything together. And you can also tuck in between the gaps on the top. And then don't forget the vase near the top of the vase. starting to really see the shape forming. And if these larger hydrangea leaves bother you, you're welcome to take them off. I'm gonna keep them because they're gonna get hidden by other things anyway. So, a few more pieces, and then I'm gonna pause on ligustrum and move to some of our blooms so we can get other things in the vase. And then I'm gonna save this piece for the end. So I can tuck some extra greenery. So just make sure you're stripping any of those leaves, as repetitive as it may be. And you want fresh cut on the bottom of each piece, and every flower that you put in as well. Okay, great. So I'm pausing on ligustrum after this piece. And now we are going to move on to our peonies. And since I've got one side blue hydrangea and then I've got my white here, I'm going to kind of try to pocket things so it feels a little red, white, and blue. I don't want to do it too much too scattered around because it'll end up looking kind of polka dotted with red. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm gonna start with my white roses, and I'm going to clean any of these low-lying leaves off. Be careful if there are thorns, and take off any of those guard petals that are damaged. And these white roses are called playa blancas, so that's what you'll see on your formula sheet. And I'm gonna go ahead through and clean all of my roses now. So same thing with every single one. Strip those low-lying leaves. Remove any damaged guard petals. It does not hurt the flower at all to take those guard petals off. And if you have a rose that seems a little too closed for you, if you like it like this, which this one is actually a perfect rose, so I probably wouldn't even do this normally, but a trick for opening the center of them up a little bit is to blow on it a little bit in the center, and then it just kind of helps it open. They'll open slowly as they age in your arrangement, so you definitely don't have to do that. It's just a tip for if they're really, really tightly closed. So now I'm gonna also grab my red roses, which it says Freedom on your formula sheet. And the Freedom roses are these, which is very fitting for 4th of July. And same thing with these, removing those leaves, careful of any rogue thorns, and then take off those guard petals. You don't need them. And same thing for the last two. So I've got, I believe there are 10 roses in your bucket. So we'll see if my vision can kind of come to life. So I'm gonna start with my white ones, and I'm gonna nestle them kind of near my white hydrangea. Sorry, I'm not showing it to you. So I'm gonna nestle my first one here. And this also, when you're designing with full-size hydrangea, when you're putting roses and peonies, etc. in, this is your opportunity to fill those holes. And when you're putting your roses in, again, keep the stems long so they're long enough to reach as close to the bottom of the vase as possible, just because when the water level lowers as the flowers are drinking, you don't want anything to be too short where it's not submerged in water. That's when it'll die really quickly. So keep things long, and then you can always cut and trim if it's too long, but better safe than sorry. And so I've nestled 1 and 2 to an angle. So I like to always group my roses, and When I'm grouping, I also like to vary the distance that I stick them out from the arrangement. It just creates more dimension and more of a textural piece. And even when you like that rounded style, you still want to kind of vary that height a little bit, or the length of the stem, just so it looks a little more interesting. So now that I've got the three, sorry. I've got 3 there, and then back here between my white and blue hydrangea over here, I'm going to stick these plias up high. So it's hard to see past that ligustrum, but I've got 1 there, and I've got 1 more. So I'm really trying to kind of separate everything. And if you want to mix the red and the blue throughout, that's totally fine. I'm just gonna try to do kind of a stripey arrangement. Not literally, but an abstract stripe. So then, since we've got our white over there, and we've got our blue here, I'm gonna tuck the red around this vicinity. So, sharp angles, again, I'll show you what it would be like if you left it too long. So if you're sticking your stem in and it's sticking out, protruding like this, you left the stem a little too long, that's when you would just trim it enough where it can tuck. And it doesn't have to tuck, you don't want it to tuck so far in that it's falling into the arrangement. You want that, the length to be compatible with the size of the arrangement. So I've got 2 there, and then I've got 1 more that I'm gonna nestle in here. So I've got a group of red, white, and then we've got our blue back here. And then we've got our other red. So I'm gonna stick those here. And I've got my last 2 right there. So this is kind of like my white section, my blue section. I'm gonna move this white one over. And then my red. So now that we've got these big old peonies, we're gonna pop these in. And with peonies, they have these little nodules on the side where other little leaves and buds come out, and you can just kind of cut those, scrape those off carefully. And when you do that, you get a smoother stem, so it's easier to insert it into your arrangement. You kind of have trouble sometimes if you leave those on, and especially if you're trying to adjust and pull something out and put it back in. So right away, I'm nestling 1 peony right here with my red roses. Gorgeous, and we've got 3, so we're gonna really make this side red. And so I'm going 1 up top here, if it will go. And like I said, just scraping those little things off makes it so much easier. And again, you're keeping those stems long, as long at least as your base. So I've got 1 there, 1 there. And then since I don't want it to be too literal, red, white, blue, I have a gap back here that I'm gonna nestle 1 in right there. And I'm nestling it in near my 2 white roses that I have. There we go. Actually, I'm changing my mind. And I'm gonna actually group them. So I've got 2 here. And then I'm gonna put my 3rd one down here, low like that. that. And so from all angles, you're kind of getting the red, white, and the blue. And sorry, I'm turning the brightness up a bit on this. That's better. And now you can kind of see the red more. So since we've got this other red, we're gonna do our spray roses next. And I'm sorry, I just realized we have Aurelia. This was in the bottom of my bucket. And Aurelia is great for like a modern kind of group design. So what I'm gonna do is pick a back. So this is gonna be the back of my arrangement. And I'm gonna tuck those in where that blue hydrangea is in the back. And it's gonna create a modern kind of feel. And I should have done this first, so apologies. But you can nestle them right in like that. And then I've got one more, and this one's quite short, so I am gonna nestle it really low, close to the baseline. The baseline, and get that in there if I can. There we go. Like that. So it's more just, it's like serving a little, it's giving a little modern touch. So this arrangement isn't leaning as old school. And let's see if I can get this one in here. This one actually, the stem is too short, so I'm not gonna use my second one, but that's okay. So I've got this for the modern touch. We've got the feel of the red, white, and blue. And now I'm going to continue to the spray roses. So the spray roses, same thing with roses, but times 3 or 4, however many buds. You want to remove any of the damaged guard petals. And if anything seems to be kind of falling apart, you can pull that bud off, no problem. And then you're gonna remove any of the low-lying leaves. Once you've removed those, you're going to pick a spot for and this one is falling apart, so I'm not gonna use it. So apologies if you have any that are kind of crumbling, but just leave out whatever doesn't work. We always give you extra in these buckets in case of any sort of loss. So I'm tucking one back there, and same thing, remove those leaves, remove any damaged petals, and then find a spot. So I'm gonna mix the red back through with the white. So I've got a little red section back there. And the next thing that I'm gonna go ahead and use is our delphinium. So our delphinium, oh wait, I have one more spray, perfect. One more spray rose, removing those guard petals, leaves, anything that doesn't look up to snuff. And then I'm gonna put that there. So I've got kind of a little area of red. And then we're gonna pop our blue in right here so you'll really see that blue come into play, since it's kind of hard to see anything other than red at this angle. So once we've got those in, we're gonna pull our delphinium in. And with the delphinium, you're just gonna strip off any of those blooms or any of the small leaves that are at the bottom of the stem that may fall into the vase. So strip anything off that you don't need, measure with your vase to cut, and for something like this that's a linear bloom, you do want it to stick out of the vase. So don't be afraid to really have it making a statement and kind of popping out. Gives a little firework moment. So yeah, with these, you would just pull these off. And I always like to do it at an angle. I never like to stick these straight down. And then since we just have the two, make sure I'm not missing anything again. Since we just have the two, I'm going to angle them in right next to each other. If I split them up when there's just two, it tends to kind of look like antenna, so I kind of try to avoid that. So now we've got our blue, and now I can kind of feel the blue coming into the arrangement, and then we're gonna put our thistle in. So our thistle is this gorgeous dynamite thistle, I believe is the variety, and we love this. I love this for summer. I think it's so fun. And also for 4th of July, these are like miniature fireworks. So with something like this, sometimes you can split it and use it as two. So I'm gonna try to do that just for this one to show you guys. So I would cut here, and then I would have a piece here. And then for this one is gonna be too short for the arrangement. So I'm gonna pull that off. Or cut that off, and then out of that one piece, I've got two. And if you want to leave it like this, which for this one I will, you're just gonna strip those bottom leaves off and then make a sharp cut at the bottom. And for this one too, I'm gonna pull that one off that's short. And I'm gonna make it stick out so you really see the blue. And then last one, I'm going to nestle up here, like that. So now we've really got the red, the white, and the blue is kind of, see that? And the last thing that we've got before we add some touches of ligustrum, just to shape things up, is our Veronica. We love Veronica. Comes in a lot of different colors: lavender, white, hot pink, etc. It's a really fun linear flower. And for this, I'm going to protrude it out near my white section. So it really makes a statement over here. And so I'm cutting those and leaving them quite long so they can stick out. So I'm gonna take a look at this from the front, and I've got those two there, and I've got one more. And when I'm deciding, I'm probably gonna go high with this one here, so it can kind of blend with the white, with the delphinium. So we've got, actually, we'll move it closer to the front, like that. So that, oops, I've got something where the stem is not in the water. So make sure you're checking if you have all your stems that have made it in the water. And this is our final fun little 4th of July arrangement. We now are going to take our last few pieces of ligustrum and tuck those in as my Lazy Susan spins on its own. So looking at it just with a critical eye and seeing where it might need a little shaping. So since I've done this kind of quite dramatically on this side, I'm gonna pop a couple pieces of ligustrum here to kind of balance that, just balance that shape out a bit. So last couple pieces, and then we are all finished. So I hope that the weather is lovely this weekend and you can spend time outdoors. with your family, hopefully in a pool, and just keep adding fresh water to your arrangement every day, and you can kind of stick your finger in the vase and see if it is in need of any water. You can feel, and you can just water straight through the top, or just add a little water with a pitcher or watering can, etc. And it should last you probably throughout the week. And if anything starts to die first, you can just pull that out and toss it, and it'll help the other things stay fresh. So that's just a good thing to keep in mind. So give it fresh water, and I hope you enjoy your holiday weekend and anytime you're with your family. And thanks again for joining us for our virtual workshops. It's always a pleasure to have you.